The night was quiet. Snow fell slowly from the sky. The wind howled through the empty street like a ghost. Jacob sat alone in his small house, drinking hot coffee and watching the flames in the fireplace. He lived far from the city, deep in the mountains. No one ever came to his door, not at night, not in winter. Then he heard it. Knock, just one. Weak, soft, almost like it came from a child's hand. Jacob frowned and stood up. He grabbed his flashlight and walked to the front door. Another knock came, barely louder than the first. He opened the door. His heart nearly stopped. There, standing in the snow, was a strange figure. A woman. Thin. Pale. Not human. Her skin was soft lavender. Her big eyes were glowing faintly. Her silver hair hung down, wet with snow. She wore thin cloth, torn and dirty. Her feet were bare. She looked up at Jacob but said nothing. Then she collapsed. Jacob dropped to his knees. "Hey, can you hear me?" She was ice cold. Her hands trembled. Her breath was weak. He didn't think twice. He picked her up and carried her inside. Inside, he laid her near the fireplace. She was light, far too light, like she hadn't eaten in days. He wrapped her in blankets, placed a pillow under her head, and ran to the kitchen. He heated soup, thick, hot, and full of vegetables. He placed it on the table and returned to her side. Her eyes fluttered open slowly. "You're okay now," Jacob said softly. "You're safe." She blinked, confused. Her lips parted, but no words came. Only a soft, frightened whimper. Jacob held up his hands. "It's all right. I won't hurt you." She stared at the fire, eyes wide. Then slowly, she sat up, her body trembled as she did. She looked around the room, her gaze landing on the food. Jacob pointed at the bowl. "Eat, please." She looked unsure, like she didn't trust it. But the hunger in her belly was stronger than fear. She reached for the spoon with shaking hands. "Like?" First sip made her eyes fill with tears. She ate like someone who hadn't seen food in weeks. Jacob sat nearby, silent. He didn't want to scare her. When the bowl was empty, she looked at him. Her lips moved. "Thank." Her voice was soft, barely more than a whisper. She seemed to struggle with the word. Jacob smiled. "You're welcome." She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. He caught her before she hit the floor. "You need rest," he said gently. She looked down, ashamed. He helped her to the couch and made sure she was warm. Her eyes kept watching him, as if she couldn't believe he wasn't yelling, wasn't hurting her, wasn't sending her back into the cold. Jacob sat across from her, sipping his coffee. "Where are you from?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. "Can you tell me your name?" She looked away. That's when he noticed it. A thin band around her ankle, metal, broken with lights that no longer glowed. He didn't ask more questions. Not yet. Hours passed. She slept peacefully, curled up like a child. Jacob watched the snow through the window. Who was she? Why was she alone in the mountains? What happened to her? He didn't have answers. But one thing he knew for sure: she didn't knock on his door to hurt him. She knocked because she had nowhere else to go. When morning came, she woke slowly. She stared at the sun through the window like it was a new thing. Jacob gave her water, then offered more food. She smiled this time, a real smile. Jacob couldn't help but smile back. "You're safe here, I promise." She tilted her head, trying to understand. Then she placed her hand over her chest and pointed at him. "Safe," she repeated, in a broken voice. Jacob nodded. Yes, safe. He didn't know her story. Not yet. But he was ready to find out. And maybe she was ready to trust again, even if she came from a different world. The alien woman sat near the fireplace, hugging her knees. Jacob watched her from the kitchen, careful not to scare her. She didn't speak, she barely moved, but her eyes, they said everything. Fear. confusion, pain, like someone who had lost more than she could carry. Every time he stepped too close, she flinched, not from surprise, but from fear, like she was used to pain, like someone had hurt her before, many times. Jacob moved slowly, always showing her his empty hands. He spoke gently, even though he knew she didn't understand much. "Do you want some tea?" he asked, holding up the cup. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away. So he placed it on the table beside her and stepped back. She reached for it. Her hands shook as she lifted the cup. She sniffed it first, like a wild animal unsure of food. Then she took a small sip. She blinked. Her eyes softened. Jacob felt something break inside him. What had they done to her? Who could leave someone like her, so kind, so small, in the cold to die? He sat down across the room. "My name's Jacob," he said. "I live here alone. No one's coming. You're safe." She looked at him, then down at the tea. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She wanted to speak, but something inside her held the words back. Later that day, Jacob brought out his old tablet. He opened a translation app. He showed her pictures. "Water," he said, pointing to the cup. "Water," he repeated slowly. Then he pointed to himself. "Jacob." She stared for a moment, then raised one small hand and touched her chest. "Leary." Her voice was so soft he almost missed it. Jacob smiled. "Leary," he repeated. She nodded. A name. Her name. A piece of her story had finally come out. That night, while Jacob cooked rice and eggs, he saw something strange. Leary wasn't in the living room anymore. He checked the hallway. The door to the guest room was open. She wasn't there. Then he heard it. Soft metal sounds. He followed the sound to his storage room. There she was, crouched near the wall, stuffing dry bread into a blanket. Cans, snacks, even tea bags. She froze. When she saw him, her eyes wide, guilty, ashamed. She thought he'd be angry, but Jacob didn't shout. He didn't move. Instead, he knelt down and gently said, "You don't have to hide food here." She didn't understand the words, but she felt the tone. Slowly, he picked up a can and handed it to her. "Keep it," he said. "You don't have to steal. You can eat any time you want." Leary's lip quivered. Tears filled her eyes. But she nodded. That night, she sat on the couch beside Jacob for the first time. Not too close, just near enough to feel warmth. She pointed to things in the room, wanting to learn. He helped. Lamp. Chair. Fire. She struggled but tried. Her voice was still quiet, but each word was a tiny victory. Jacob felt proud, not of himself, but of her. She was trying. She was healing. But that peace didn't last long. Sometime past midnight, Jacob woke to a scream. He rushed out of his room, heart racing. Leary was curled in a corner, sobbing, her hands over her ears. She was shaking all over. Jacob didn't touch her. He sat on the floor nearby and whispered, "You're not there anymore. You're here, with me. You're safe." Her breathing slowed, bit by bit. She opened her eyes. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. She saw him, and she didn't run. The next morning, Jacob found something on the table, drawn in soft pencil, clumsy but clear. A figure, small, with long hair. Beside her, a taller one, with short hair, and a house. She had drawn him. She had drawn herself. And she had drawn this place. Her safe place. Jacob looked toward the window. The snow still fell. The world outside was still cold. But inside, something warm had begun to grow. Leary had lost everything, but now maybe she had found something again, something simple, something human. Hope. The days passed slowly, like quiet ripples on a calm lake. Leary no longer hid food. She no longer looked over her shoulder every 5 minutes. but she still spoke very little. She sat by the window often, watching the snow fall, her eyes filled with a strange sadness, like she was waiting for someone who would never return. Jacob noticed he brought her new blankets, made her favorite soup again, left books with pictures beside her chair. Always gentle, always patient. Still, something was missing. One morning, Jacob walked into the living room holding something old, a little silver bracelet, a smooth band with soft carvings. It had belonged to his late sister. He knelt beside Leary and held it out. She tilted her head, unsure. Jacob smiled. "This is yours now." She didn't move. He gently placed it around her wrist. "It means you belong. Here." She looked down at it, touched it with her fingers. Then, her lips parted. "Leary," she whispered. Jacob nodded. "Leary, that's your name." Her hand curled around the bracelet. Something changed in her eyes. Not fear, not harm, but something new. Warmth. That afternoon, while Jacob fixed the old wood stove, Leary came closer than ever before. She knelt beside him, silent, but not afraid. He handed her a screwdriver. She took it. Her hand still trembled, but she helped. It wasn't about the stove. It was about trust. Later, she pointed to herself again. "Leary," she said, louder this time. Then she pointed at him. He smiled. "Jacob." She repeated it slowly. J. Cobb. Then she said another word. "Home?" Jacob paused. "Yes," he said softly. "This is your home now." That evening, Leary sat at the table while Jacob cooked dinner. He noticed something strange. She was drawing again, but this time the paper showed more than just two people. There was a little garden, a cat, and small lights in the sky, a peaceful world. Jacob looked at the drawing, then at her. "You want this?" Leary nodded. He placed a gentle hand over her drawing. "Then we'll make it real, together." But that night, while Leary slept, Jacob stepped outside for firewood, and something made him freeze. A faint red light blinked in the forest, then vanished. Jacob stood still, heart racing. A drone? A tracker? Someone watching? He hurried back inside and quietly locked every door. He looked at Leary, still sleeping peacefully on the couch. She had stopped running. But maybe the danger hadn't. The next morning, Leary was cheerful. She helped stir the pot, washed a plate, even laughed softly when Jacob nearly dropped a spoon. He couldn't ruin that moment with fear, not yet. Instead, he gave her something else, a nameplate, made from a thin piece of wood. On it, he'd carved Leary's room. She gasped when she saw it. Her hand flew to her mouth. Then she reached out slowly, carefully, and touched the letters. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Leary, room?" He nodded. "It's yours. You stay as long as you want." She didn't speak. She simply ran forward and hugged him, tight, shaking. For a moment, Jacob didn't move. Then he held her back. Not as a stranger, not as a guest, but as someone who had found a place and a person worth holding on to. Later that day, Leary surprised him again. She pointed to a photo on the wall, Jacob and his sister years ago. "Who?" she asked. He explained slowly. "My sister. She passed away long ago." Leary looked at the photo for a long time, then she pointed to herself, then him, then the photo. Jacob smiled. "Yes," he said. "We're family now, too." He gave her more than a name. He gave her a place, a life, a reason to stay. And slowly, word by word, smile by smile, Leary began to believe it. Snow still covered the mountains like a thick white blanket. The forest was silent, the wind gentle. Inside the cabin, warmth filled the air. Leary was smiling more now. She had even started humming, soft little songs from a language Jacob didn't understand. For the first time, she looked peaceful. But peace never stays long when it comes to those who've escaped chains. It began with a strange noise. Jacob was chopping wood near the shed when he heard it, a soft hum in the sky. Too smooth, too steady, not a plane, not wind. He looked up. A silver dot hovered above the trees. It shimmered for a second, then zipped away. His stomach sank. Back inside, Leary was cleaning the table. But the moment she saw his face, her smile vanished. "What?" she whispered. Jacob hesitated, then told her. Leary froze. Her hands dropped to her sides. She looked toward the forest, then the sky. Then she stepped back. She was trembling. "No," she said. "No, no, no." That night, she didn't eat. She sat in the corner of the room with her knees pulled to her chest. Her bracelet, the one Jacob gave her, was clutched tightly in her hand. He sat near her. "It might be nothing," he said gently. But deep down, he didn't believe his own words. The next morning, they came. Jacob heard the knock while making breakfast, but it wasn't like Leary's knock weeks ago. This was cold, sharp, commanding. Bang, bang. He opened the door slowly. 3 tall figures stood outside. They weren't wearing normal clothes. Their suits were dark, armored, and smooth. Their eyes glowed blue behind strange helmets. One of them stepped forward. "Subject 114 has been located. Return her." Jacob stepped in front of the door. "Who are you?" "We are not here for you, human. We are here for her." Jacob didn't move. "She doesn't want to go back." The figure's voice stayed calm. "She belongs to us." Behind him, Leary gasped. She stepped into view, just for a moment. The moment they saw her, the lead figure raised a small, glowing device. Jacob slammed the door shut. "What's going on?" he asked, turning to Leary. She was pale, shaking, eyes wide with terror. "Slavers," she whispered. Jacob's heart dropped. "They own you?" "No one owns me," she said through tears. "Not anymore." He locked every door and window, turned off the lights, made sure she stayed low. For hours, nothing happened. Then late at night they heard it again, the sound of something tapping against the wall. Jacob looked outside. The 3 figures were still there, standing, waiting, watching. "I'll leave," Leary whispered. "If I go, they won't hurt you." Jacob looked at her. "You're not going anywhere." She shook her head. "They will kill you." "Let them try." She stared at him for a long time. Then she did something she had never done before. She took off the bracelet and handed it back. "I don't want you to die because of me." Jacob looked down at the bracelet, then back at her, and without a word he put it back around her wrist. "You're not a burden," he said. "You're family." At midnight the cabin lights flickered. The power was being messed with. Jacob picked up his old hunting rifle. He hadn't used it in years, but now, he might have to. Leary touched his arm. Help." Jacob shook his head. "No, you hide." But she stepped closer. "I won't leave again." Outside, the figures began to move forward. Slow, careful, steps. They didn't want noise, they didn't want to fight, they wanted control. Jacob stepped onto the porch, rifle ready. "I won't let you take her." The tallest one lifted a hand. "You protect a thing that is not yours." "She's not a thing, she's free." A moment of silence passed. Then the one in the back raised a weapon. Before Jacob could react, a piercing scream exploded behind him, not from fear, but from Leary. Her voice ripped through the cold like lightning. The air shimmered. The 3 figures fell to their knees, grabbing their heads. Their helmets cracked. Sparks flew. Jacob turned in shock. Leary stood barefoot in the snow, eyes glowing. voice still vibrating in the air. She looked like fire in the shape of a woman. When the sound stopped, the strangers collapsed, unconscious. Jacob ran to her. She fell into his arms, weak and shaking. "I protected home," she whispered. Held her tight. "You did." Inside the cabin, Jacob placed her on the couch and wrapped her in blankets. Leary reached for his hand, and for the first time, with full voice, she said, "I'm not afraid anymore." The wind blew hard outside the cabin, but inside everything was quiet, too quiet. Jacob sat beside Leary's bed. She was still weak after what she did, after that powerful scream that knocked the slavers down like falling trees. Her hands were cold, her breath slow, her eyes barely open. He held her hand gently. "You saved me," he whispered. "You saved us both." Leary's lips moved. Hurt. Inside. Jacob didn't know if she meant her body or her heart. Maybe both. The three strangers were still outside, unconscious in the snow. Jacob had dragged their weapons far into the forest and buried them beneath the ice. He had no idea if more would come. He only knew one thing now. Leary wasn't just a scared girl anymore. She had power, and she had chosen to use it, not to escape, but to protect him. That night, as Jacob placed another log in the fire, he heard movement behind him. Leary stood there, holding her blanket tightly around her. Her legs shook. But she stood anyway. Jacob got up quickly. "You shouldn't be on your feet." Okay, she whispered. "Little strong now." He helped her sit near the fire. She looked into the flames. Then she said something that stopped him cold. "I killed before." Jacob blinked. "What?" She pointed to herself, then tapped her head. "Before this. Before you, I scream, and they die. Bad men, chains, hurt me. I scream." She looked down. "Then I run." Jacob sat beside her, silent. She wasn't telling him this to scare him. She was telling him the truth. She had been used, hurt, broken, until something inside her had snapped. That scream, the power, it wasn't just sound. It was pain, it was rage, and it could kill. "You did what you had to do," Jacob said quietly. She looked at him with wide eyes. "You don't fear me?" He shook his head. "No, you're not the monster. They are." Tears filled her eyes again. She covered her mouth, trying to hold them back, but one slipped down her cheek. Later that night, Jacob checked the camera traps he had hidden near the tree line. The slavers were gone, vanished. No footsteps, no bodies, just melted snow where they had once stood. He showed the footage to Leary. She stared for a long time, then whispered, "They never stop, always watching." Jacob looked outside at the dark woods. "If they come back," he said, "they'll find out we're not easy to take." The next morning, Jacob found something strange. Leary was writing. Not just pictures this time, but words. Spelling them slowly with care. One sentence stood out, "I not weapon, I woman." Jacob read it aloud. Leary nodded firmly. No more hiding. He built a stronger lock on the cabin door, set alarms in the forest, reinforced the windows with metal bars. But what he didn't realize was that Leary was doing something too. Training. She sat each morning with her hands in the snow, breathing deep. She whispered in her strange language, focused, calm. Whatever that power was, she was learning to control it. Not for anger, not for revenge, but to protect the life she now had. One day, Jacob brought her an old coat. Thick, long, warm. He had stitched her name into it. Leary, right on the chest. She smiled, but then she stepped forward and touched his jacket. "No name?" Jacob laughed. "Just a plain coat." She shook her head and began stitching his name into it. Slowly, carefully. Now we same, she said. And then, the quiet broke again. A loud crashing noise shook the forest. Jacob and Leary ran outside. A small ship, dark gray and smoking, had landed near the frozen lake. Lights blinked. Engines hummed, but no one stepped out. Jacob raised his rifle. Leary stepped in front of him. No, she said softly. This time, I go. He reached out. What do you mean? I talk, she said. I show them. I am not afraid. Jacob didn't want to let her go, but he saw it in her eyes. She wasn't running anymore. She was standing. As she walked toward the ship, snow crunching under her boots, the wind lifted her coat behind her like wings. Jacob stood by the cabin, watching, ready. If anything went wrong, he would fight, but in that moment something inside him knew. She wasn't the one who needed saving anymore. She was the shield now. She was the protector, and for the first time since she fell at his door, cold and starving, Leary walked tall. The ship by the lake stayed for 2 hours. No one came out. No message, no threat, just silence, then smoke, and finally it lifted off and vanished into the clouds. Jacob didn't trust it. Leary did not sleep that night. And by morning, they both knew what they had to do. They had to disappear. Jacob packed only what they needed: tools, food, water, blankets, his rifle. Leary quietly rolled up her drawings, tucking them into her bag. She left one behind, though, the one with the small cabin and stars above it. She placed it on the table like a goodbye note to the life they were leaving. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just took Jacob's hand and nodded. They hiked for hours through the forest, then deeper still, into the lands without roads, without power lines, without names. Jacob had an old place there, a hunting cabin from long ago, tucked between cliffs and thick trees. It had no signal, no trackers, no noise. It was forgotten. Perfect. When they reached it, the sky was dark with clouds, but Leary stepped inside and smiled. It smelled like dust and pine wood, but it was safe. Safe was enough. Jacob lit the fire and cooked simple food. Leary helped clean the space. She found old curtains, soft chairs, and a cracked mirror. She stood before it for a long time, staring at her reflection. Then she picked up a comb and began fixing her hair, slow, careful strokes, as if preparing for a life she finally believed she could live. Later that night, Leary asked a question she had never dared to ask before. Why you help me? Jacob looked up from the fire. Because no one else did. She shook her head. That not enough. Many see me. All turn away. Why you stop? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You knocked. That's all it took. Leary smiled, eyes shining, then whispered, Thank you for opening door. In the days that followed, they built a new routine. They chopped wood, drew maps of the forest, boiled snow into clean water. Leary made art from bark and stone. Jacob caught fish in the icy stream. They said little, but understood much. Some bonds don't need words. One day Leary found a small cave near the cliffs. Inside she drew symbols on the walls, her people's marks, circles, stars, spirals. Jacob watched her. What do they mean? She pointed to one symbol. Pain, then another. Escape. Then she drew something new, a hand holding another. What's that? He asked. She smiled. Belonging. At night she lay beside the fire, sketching with charcoal. One picture kept coming back, herself, with small, childlike figures holding her hands. Not human, not fully alien. Something in between. Jacob saw her watching him each time she drew. Yet he said nothing, but his heart answered before his lips could. Then came the storm. Heavy snow. Winds like knives. For 3 days they were trapped inside. But they laughed, told stories, shared food, and made music by tapping spoons on metal. It wasn't survival anymore. It was living. When the storm passed, the forest looked new, clean, pure. Leary stepped outside and lifted her arms to the sky. She turned slowly in the snow, eyes closed, smiling. She wasn't the same girl who collapsed at the door. Not anymore. Jacob called out, "You look like someone born here." She laughed. "Maybe. I was." That night, while wrapping herself in the blanket, she whispered something new. "You are my place now." Jacob looked over. "Your home?" She nodded. "My safe. My heart. My family." He walked over and sat beside her. "You are mine too." She leaned against him. And for the first time, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but trees and stars, they both felt found. Spring came slowly to the mountains. The snow melted in quiet streams. Green returned to the trees. Birds filled the silence with music. The world was waking up, and so was Leary. She no longer flinched at sudden sounds, no longer hid her food or avoided mirrors. She spoke clearly now, her words careful but proud. She laughed more, smiled brighter. Even her walk had changed, no longer silent like a shadow. She walked like someone who belonged. Jacob noticed every change. She danced when she stirred soup. She hummed when she cleaned her sketch tools. She left drawings tucked into corners of the cabin, little pictures of stars, fire, and two people sitting side by side, always two, always together. One morning, Jacob stepped outside and found something strange. The old garden behind the cabin, once dead and frozen, had been dug up. Leary was on her knees, her hands deep in the soil. She looked up and smiled. Plant. For future. Jacob tilted his head. Vegetables? She shook her head. Life. Later that evening, as the fire crackled and soft light filled the room, Leary placed something in Jacob's hand. It was a necklace, simple, made of twine and tiny stones. In the center, two carved shapes. One was her, the other, him. Jacob stared at it. "Where did you learn this?" She pointed to her chest. "Here," she said. "From feeling." He put it around his neck. It didn't shine like metal. It didn't glow like tech. But it felt heavier than anything he'd worn before. Like love made real. Leary looked at him carefully. "I used to say thank you before." Jacob nodded. "Yes, you did." She leaned closer. "I don't say it anymore." He blinked. "Why not?" She smiled gently. "Because you are not help. You are not stranger. You are family." Jacob couldn't speak. His chest tightened. Tears came before words, and she wiped them from his cheek with her small hand. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Jacob asked, "Do you miss your home?" Leary looked out the window at the forest. "I do." Then she looked back at him. "But this is my new home. Chosen home." She pointed to the fireplace, the drawings, the tools they both used. "Here, no one owns me. Here, I own myself." Jacob nodded. "And no one will ever take that away again." That night, Leary brought out a wrapped bundle. She had been hiding it for weeks. Inside were small bits of metal, wires and glass, collected from broken drones and devices. She had built something, a small beacon, but not to call for help, to send a message. Jacob looked at it unsure. "What does it do?" She pressed a button. A soft, warm light glowed. Then she spoke into it, voice calm and steady. "If you hear this, I am not dead. I am not your tool. I am free, and I am not alone." She turned it off. Jacob raised a brow. "You think someone out there will hear it?" She shrugged. "Maybe someone like me. Maybe someone waiting. Afraid. Hiding. I want them to know. There is more." Jacob smiled. "That's brave." She looked at him. "No. That's family." As stars filled the sky above their little cabin, Leary rested her head on Jacob's shoulder. They watched the fire fade. Tomorrow they would hunt, build, and plant. Tomorrow they would live. She had once come to him broken, starving, afraid. Now she stood beside him strong, whole, and loved. She had no chains now, no collar, no fear. Just one word for the man who opened his door that night long ago: family.